Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today on the Egora Experience program. I am your host, Cesare Jurevich, and today I have here with me Dallas Duff from the great nation of USA. Now, Dallas is a limited government conservative and a writer and a musician. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. You can check out my book, "How to Win Every Debate as a Conservative," right there. All right, got
Nice.
the cue up the promo there.
Yeah, tell us a few more words about yourself, Dallas.
Uh, yeah, well, I don't know exactly what you want to know, but I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, USA. Moved out to California for a little bit. Now I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, I am technically a musician by trade, but I'm found myself very interested in politics and philosophy. So I thought, heck, why not write a book and to talk to people like you, and we'll see what life brings.
All right. Uh, Fascinating. That's awesome. I'm really happy to have you on the show. So, for those of you who are new to Egora Experience, let me tell you real quick about what we do here. The International Logic Party has built a new kind of networking platform. It's called Egora, and it actually makes politics rational, efficient, and incorruptible. This thing actually gives ordinary citizens like us real political power. Through Egora, we can make our governments do what we, the people, want them to do. Now, on this show, we will be using Agora to discuss some political issues and ideas, and we want you to participate with us. So please register for Agora. The link is in the video description. And then search both me and my guest, Dallas. And then as we are having our discussion, you'll be able to support our ideas by including them into your ideological profile, if you agree with them and you want to support them. Here, your voice has real power, and we want to hear you speak. Okay, Dallas, let's get started. We're going to discuss two ideas in the Agora, one from me and one from you, and we will try to get each other to support those ideas. I will go first. So let me run my idea by you right here. And again, it's in my ideological profile. Every human has the right to reproduction unless it is found that they may be harmful to their offspring, including the failure to at least minimally care for them. However, human society has the right to limit the reproduction of its members in a fair way in order to avoid the depletion of scarce resources to prevent inevitable conflict. What do you think about that idea, and will you support it?
So my first instinct is no, but well, I mean, there may be small elements in there that I could potentially support, but maybe would need a little more extrapolation on the details of that. So I assume some of that is like coded language for like abortion rights and things of that nature, right? Like the what do you say, like the right to reproduction. I don't want to misstate what you said. So what was that? What was that first part?
Well, ultimately it's up to each person to interpret what the idea means, and then it's also up to the politicians that we're creating to interpret what those ideas mean and whether the people like the interpretation that the politicians are giving to those ideas. So the first part, every human has the right to reproduction. That's the first segment of the first sentence. I think we agree on that, yeah?
Well, it depends on what that means. We may not agree on that. I mean, I think you have the right. Every human being definitely should have the fundamental right to not be forced into a, let's say, a slavery type situation where they're impregnated, and it's like they're forced to pop out kids and
No,
a
no, no.
scenario like that.
Talking
But
about that.
yeah, I realize that's probably not what you're referring to. So yeah, so I would definitely ask for a little more extrapolation on the concept.
Well, the idea is that people can actually reproduce. That someone, yeah, that people should have that fundamental right in general. But we are saying that we should be able to impose certain restrictions on that because sometimes people reproducing carelessly, well, can create a lot of problems, and they can create problems for the people around them as well as for their own offspring. And so the first sentence, it continues with the next clause, unless it is found that they may be harmful to their offspring, including the failure to at least minimally care for them. So the idea is that maybe you have, uh, a, I'm not a medical specialist, but the idea is that you might have a mentally unstable person who has a lot of children and is not able to provide, well, a family life. And I mean, not to mention like physical needs. I mean, potentially society can provide that for their children. And I think society, I personally think we should, even if the parents can't take care of the children, we should be able to provide that. But they might not be able to provide a nurturing home and, a good, constructive, wholesome environment that prepares this child to grow up and be, well, independent and self-reliant and actually be ready to participate in society. So some people might not be mentally able to do that. And I think that we have to take that into consideration, that some people might end up having a lot of children and they cause a lot of hardship to those children by having too many of them. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there are nuggets of things that you're saying in there that I like sort of agree with. But again, like let's kind of talk about this kind of piece by piece and break it down. So we're talking essentially about abortion rights within the context of this, right? Like that's part of what you're saying. Like if a person gets pregnant and they, for whatever reason, and I don't know, if you're about any kind of restrictions on abortions at all. But I assume what you're saying is a person has the right to abort their offspring based upon their own feelings, or let's say situations that they may feel like they're in a situation where they can't take care of the child, or whatever it might be. I mean, there's probably a whole plethora of situations that are involved. So is that part of what we're talking about here?
No, we're not. This is not really about abortion. It's not about abortion. It's really about, I mean, for the lack of a better word right now, let's say sterilization. Individuals that cannot care for their children, actually about sterilizing them at a certain point, preventing them from having more children. It would not be like they sometimes do in China, and they have done this in China. Like there were pregnant women, they actually aborted their children to keep the policy of the one child. Like, I mean, that's just freaking atrocious, horrendous, what that does. But we are talking about the prevention of conception rather than, at least that's how I see it. Again, I'm defending this idea for myself,
Sure.
And I think any reasonable person would see it that way too. So that's who I think I'm speaking for.
So are you talking about self-imposed sterilization, or are you talking about government-enforced sterilization? Because the former I would
government
support, the
imposed.
latter I would not.
Government imposed. Yeah,
Okay, well, yeah, I definitely would not support that. That's like that's totalitarianism, way beyond the point that I would support, or at least it's conceptually totalitarian. Not to mention what I think is a fundamental part of human rights that are being violated in that sense. So yeah, absolutely not. I would definitely not support government imposed sterilization.
And so we continue with the next clause because, I think totalitarianism is a whole different matter, but we are talking about doing this within the context of democratic society. But okay, the next clause is, however, human society has the right to limit the reproduction of its members in a fair way in order to avoid the depletion of scarce resources to prevent inevitable war. So with this clause and the other one, like you said, I guess there are two main concerns, is that people who are not able to provide for their children, they're bringing more children into this world, which then grow up very unhappy, tormented lives, probably, likely, directly because of those parents. And then we are talking about the human population getting so large that we cannot actually sustain that. And well, that leads to conflict. That leads to people fighting over the resources of which there is not enough. That which leads to violence, which is something that I think we want to avoid. Do you not agree with that?
Well, I mean, in a larger context, like, yeah, well, okay, I'll say this first off, then I'll backtrack. So yes, obviously we should avoid conflict, but I think you're sneaking in a little bit of a concept in there that I think isn't necessarily true. Like, so for example, you said something along the lines of people having children, and they like the children and maybe are continue a cycle of poverty or torment or whatever. I don't remember exactly the terminology that you used, but
Well, it could also be sexual abuse. Sorry, let me just throw that in there. It could also be pedophiles. Like if you have a pedophile, do we limit the pedophile from having more children? Do we sterilize the pedophile? So I just want to add that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and address that specifically because that's a little bit easier for me and my thoughts. So, yeah. So first off, if someone is a pedophile, then I assume we've proven that they're a pedophile, and we've put them through some type of trial of that. And my views on pedophiles is, especially since something like pedophilia is like, to me, one of the most like egregious moral violations that you could impose upon a person, or immoralities I should say, and the fact that it's probably a condition that's a very psychological condition that would probably put a person in the mindset to continually repeat that behavior. Then I think we either need to do one of two things with pedophiles. So yes, pedophiles, we should either put them in jail for life, execute them potentially, and or castrate them. And maybe you should give them the option of which one of those.
Wait, castrate. Hold on, you just said castrate. So okay, so you agree with me on that, but that's kind of what we're talking about, sterilization, right here.
Well, I said that, yeah, in that example specifically, I would agree, but only after we've proven that they are pedophile by going through a rigorous trial to say that they are guilty of such an egregious violation, and then I might give them those options. We can either kill you, lock you up forever, or chop it off. What do you which one of those do you prefer?
Well, I must say, I'm against executing people. I think we should, if you look at my other ideas, I think we should be giving people a choice to either be instituted or be sent to an island, basically where they get to live with beautiful people just like themselves. So I think people should have that freedom. I don't think we should be executing people. Now, if they come off the island, I think we should consider it. If they try to get off the island, we should consider that an invasion. And well, you know what we do with invaders, so.
Yeah. Okay. So let me. I've never heard that idea presented specifically. So I have a couple of initial thoughts on that. So my one critique of the island thing is, I think the biggest problem I see with that would be, so you put all these people on an island, and assuming that that there's a mix of male and female on the island, those people are going to reproduce.
No. See, again, with this idea, if they cannot provide for their children, they're not going to get to reproduce. Again, we're talking about limiting people's reproductive abilities. So yeah, they would definitely not be reproducing.
So are you saying we before we sent them to this island, we would castrate them? Is that the
right? Well, they would get
okay.
they would get a choice. Either they get a co-ed island where, well, they're castrated, or they get to keep their balls and they go to an all-male island, or they get to keep their ovaries and they get to go to an all-female island for females. So yeah, I think there are logical solutions for that.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, in that sense, it's not the worst idea, I guess.
I think it works, man. So yeah, I did kind of turn up the knob on that one with the pedophiles because they do create a special situation. This idea does talk about people who are not able to care for their children. Potentially, you could have alcoholics, you know, or people who are consumed, like really their lives are destroyed by drugs. You know, should they be bringing more people into this world and have children that they cannot care for? Should we as a society step into that and limit those people from doing that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean that I again like that for me personally that's a little bit too authoritarian for me. I mean, I understand the sentiment there, and also too like there's also the element of people, you know, whether we're talking about well, let's use the example of the alcoholic specifically. So you know, people can reform their behaviors and their attitudes and all these things related to that. So you know, the alcoholic could reform, and then they could have children at the point of reformation and raise those children well. So with those types of things in mind, like in particular, I think you're I don't know. I think that's something that should at least be factored into the equation. The fact that people aren't necessarily like, you know, set as in like, okay, once you are X, you know, you are forever X. Like that's
Well,
not necessarily
uh,
always the case.
vasectomy can be reversed, you know, from what I hear. So I think these solutions can be actually temporary.
Okay.
And maybe doing something like that to somebody who's an out of control alcoholic or an out of control drug abuser, the fact that they can't have any children, the fact that society says, hey, we're not going to let, you know, you can fuck up your own life, but we're not going to let you bring children into this world and fuck up their life too. And, you know, maybe sending that will send a strong enough message that, hey, maybe I need to get my fucking life straight, you know? Uh, who knows? Maybe we would be doing that person a favor by actually sending them that message.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean more towards the having the state step in and take your children away from them if you can't raise them properly, and that's the whole separate discussion potentially. But yeah, but with the whole like you know forced vasectomy thing, well, yeah, they see then we get into the issue of well, okay, these people may not want to be forced to have a vasectomy. So how are you going to get them to do that? We're going to have to get people with guns to show up at their doorstep and you know tie them down and take them to the hospital, and
Well,
that's not something I'm comfortable with.
yeah, but I'm also uncomfortable with the idea of children being separated from their parents, and you seem to be completely okay with that. I mean, that's
Well, no,
also
okay,
and
don't straw man me on
no,
that on
but
that issue. Like okay, so now you're talking about we can if you want to get into this we can. Now you're talking about a complicated issue related to like border policy, right? Like so
no, no,
like
no, no,
the
no. No, let's not go.
yeah.
No, but you do have this really let's say messed up home situation, and then you seem to be more okay with the state stepping into that and taking those children away. I find that to be actually a really huge violation of well people's quality of life. I mean, not just the parents, but the children also. You know that you're separating these families. But you seem like that's an acceptable solution. I think we should consider that this might be just as big of an evil if not potentially greater than somebody who already has children, somebody who's already failing as a parent in a very significant way, that maybe it's a bigger violation to take their children away than to prevent them from having more children. I just
Well,
as a base of comparison.
well, okay, but what do you do with the children that they already have that they're abusing or whatever the situation may be? You're still gonna have to take kids away, right? Like, you're not just gonna let them stay with an abusive parent, right? Like,
Well, right, but now, you know, are you going to let them bring more kids into the world so that they can have more abused kids, and then you have to step in and take those kids away too? I mean, you know, you have to look at that as well.
well, I mean, yeah, I understand the nature of the problem, and trust me, like, there's no perfect solution to these things. I mean, one way or another, you know, it's not. There's gonna be issues of yeah, kind of the government having to do something to step in the situation. So I mean, yeah, I mean, there's definitely conflict there, and there's definitely numerous things to think about. So while I mean, I understand your argument and the fact that we don't necessarily agree on it, but that's perfectly fine. I actually understand what you're saying, and it's something that people can obviously weigh.
So, we have a little bit of a time constraint here, but I want to address this other point, part of this idea, because the other part is we're talking about, exceeding population limits. And I don't know where you stand. Actually, I think I was reading some of your Facebook comments about where you stand on climate change. But if you consider, and there are many different considerations in how you could look at people exceeding a population limit. But the more people that we have, the more carbon we're emitting into the atmosphere, the faster the global warming is happening, uh, the more destructive the climate change can be. So one way to limit climate change is to actually, well, have less people. So there are less people putting carbon into the atmosphere. But that's just one way of looking at it. Another might be food shortages. Or we could, well, yeah. So, which again could lead to people fighting and killing each other over that. Do you concern yourself with that at all? Do you find that to be a concern? Too many people.
Well, based upon the empirical evidence we have so far, no. I mean, currently we have more people in the world than we've ever had, and yet there's less starving people than we've ever had in the world. I mean, we have more food availability today than ever before in the history of humanity. So at least based upon that specific issue, I'd say, I mean, that's clearly not an issue as far as I can see it. Then okay, what else? You mentioned a couple of other issues related to this.
It's probably carbon and pollution. That would be the biggest concerns here. Because I gotta agree with you with the food thing, and especially being for animal liberation. I think we could produce a lot more food if we actually consume food directly from the ground rather than put them through the animal industry. So that's a huge waste of land. We could feed probably potentially even twice as many people as we have right now. So but the carbon emissions, the more people that we have, people want to live at a certain quality of life. They want to use a certain amount of energy. We need more energy. We use fossil fuels for that. We haven't replaced that. That's exacerbating climate change. Do you?
Well, here's something else that I hadn't even thought of until I was listening to a lecture where Jordan Peterson was talking about this, and he brought up a good point related to this particular issue, where he said, there's an assumption that more people necessarily means creating more of these problems, but the other thing we have to potentially take into account is more people also means more minds, and more minds working to come up with solutions to solve some of these problems. Who's to say that one of those people? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the laughing smile reaction is, but I mean, who's to say that one of those people or a grouping of those people isn't going to be somebody to come up with a solution to any of these problems, and I mean, and that's what we've seen, at least for a lot of the problems that we've pointed out so far, is that we've been able to mitigate a lot of these things. I mean, you got just like Bill Gates is a good example of somebody who's been heavily involved. I mean, you could say that Bill Gates alone is responsible for mitigating a lot of issues related to people getting clean water, and being able to have accessible like plumbing systems, and the ability to kind of deal with those kinds of things. So I mean, that's something that should at least be considered. And also too, with the carbon thing, I'm not I'm not yet convinced that we're causing that many problems as far as the carbon stuff is considered. I mean, for starters, I mean, more carbon does make the Earth more greener. And if we look at the schematics of that, like at least right now, the Earth has more fertile land, like currently, than pretty much it ever has, as far as we can tell. And it's not entirely clear that a little bit of warming isn't necessarily a good thing, particularly when you compare it to a little bit of like cooling. Like a cooler Earth is definitely more problematic in terms of having like fertile land and livable land than Earth that's slightly warmer. I think the evidence suggests that at least slightly warmer Earth is an issue that we can mitigate much more than Earth that's slightly cooler.
This is really opening up a whole new discussion more about climate change than specifically because potentially the idea that we're discussing could have many different reasons for that. Maybe in another episode we should discuss the whole climate change issue. I want to tell you why I was laughing, because I was laughing at the math of what you were saying. Because it's interesting, but it's really funny, because if you think about that, we have 8 billion people in the world. And let's say that, sure, we have more people, we have more potential sources of solutions, definitely. Maybe not. Maybe, well, the point is that if we have twice as many people, we have 6 billion people, or 16 billion people, if we double that. And maybe we would have more. I don't know if we would have twice as many solutions. Maybe we would only have, 10% more solutions. I don't know if the return would be
I think.
linear.
Well, let me step in there, because I think you're maybe misconstruing the argument. The argument isn't that we have more solutions in terms of more people. I'm saying all it takes is one person to come up with a global solution, and more people means more minds that are thinking about these problems. So again, all it takes really is one person with the right solution to any problem.
No, but the point I wanted to make on that is the order of magnitude here. So we double that. If we would have to have 8 more billion people to double our chances on that. But I think the problem is that a lot of the people that we already have that are alive don't have access to be able to, develop themselves in order to create these solutions for us. So it's more about access of those people that are already here. That they're not able to deliver what their full potential. And for them to do that, I think, is an issue of energy. I mean, developing countries, they're not even close to the consumption of the US, like India, China. China is getting up there, but still, all these other places, their consumption is only going to just skyrocket. I mean, I don't know if they're like 10%, 10 or 20% of the energy usage and pollution output of the US. So if they were to reach that, because if we want more solutions, we should be giving those people opportunities. If we want to give those people opportunities, that's going to mean they're going to pollute a hell of a lot more, which could, create a lot more carbon. But the other thing I wanted to say, and I think we're actually running out of time for right now, but the other thing I wanted to say about this idea is that it's about communicating certain messages, and maybe that this is an idea that we never actually have to implement. Like kind of like we were talking about sending a message to a drug addict that, hey, if somebody is taking your children away from you, maybe that's the real sign that you should clean yourself up. And so the idea that people are aware and acknowledge this idea right here is that we can limit people's reproduction if they actually like severely get out of line is enough to keep people mindful of that and to not actually get severely out of line. My hope is that just simply by supporting this idea and by people being aware of this idea, we might never actually have to take the steps to implement that. That's, so it's about sending a message. What do you think about that? And maybe give us your closing thoughts on this, on this, if you got any closing thoughts on that.
I mean, I guess it's not always the worst tactic to try and quote unquote scare people into it's like, all right, if you don't shape up, we're gonna send people with guns to your doorstep to put you in a hospital or bed or whatever it may be. So I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to scaring people necessarily. I just don't think we should be doing that specifically. But yeah, so I don't know what to say in closing or what to comment on.
That's it. So I was trying to get you to support this idea at this point. I don't think I succeeded. Other people are watching. Other people are deciding for themselves. Actually, we're gonna have to wrap it up here. This is going to be part A of the show. We're going to continue this. We're going to give you a chance to come back at me with one of your ideas in the next section. And for right now, I think we're just going to hit pause right here. And if for those people watching, if you like that idea, please go ahead and support it. We're going to have an idea coming up from Dallas for you soon, and you'll be able to support that if you like it. So take a pause. We'll catch you soon.